We are delivering today the iPad, the new iMac, MacBook Air. One's very fortunate if you get to work on just one of these in your career.
A visionary, an innovator, an entrepreneur. Who is this iconic man? Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, the visionary founder and leader of Apple Computer, changed the way we live our lives every day.
From a turbulent past marked by experimentation to shaping the future of technology, the story of the man behind Apple is a journey like no other. Have you ever wondered how a self-professed drug user became the mastermind who gave us the iPhone, iPad, and Mac? Let's take it back in time to February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California. That's the day Steve Jobs was born, and little did anyone know that this baby would one day change the world of technology. Steve grew up in the heart of Silicon Valley, which, as you might guess, turned out to be a pretty darn fitting place for a future tech legend to be raised. Now, if we're talking about the roots of his genius, we've got to give some credit to Jobs' family garage. You know, the classic starting point for many great minds. Steve's father introduced him to electronic gadgets, teaching him how to tinker, take stuff apart, and put it all back together. That's why he got his early dose of confidence, tenacity, and some serious mechanical skills. I mean, who knew that the garage could be the birthplace of one of the world's most iconic tech companies? Okay, here's a fun tidbit about young Steve. He was quite the prankster during his elementary school days. He was so smart that his 4th grade teacher had to bribe him to study. Can you believe it? But that's just a glimpse into his rebellious spirit. He tested so well that the school wanted to catapult him straight into high school. But his parents thought, nah, let the kid have a normal childhood. So they declined the offer. Now, let's talk college. Steve Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, but college life just wasn't his jam. He dropped out after just 1 semester. Instead of following the traditional path, he spent the next year and a half popping into creative classes that caught his fancy. This is where you start to see the beginning of his innovative thinking. During those years of exploration, something unexpected happened. Steve fell head over heels in love with typography. Yes, you heard that right. Fonts, typefaces, and all that jazz. It might sound a bit unusual, but this passion for typography would later play a role in the design of Apple's products. It just goes to show that sometimes the most random interests can lead to something big. After his college stint, Steve found himself at Atari, a company well known for pioneering video games. It was in the early 70s that Jobs landed a gig as a video game designer there. Imagine young Steve working with those pixelated characters that we now consider vintage. But Jobs wasn't just all about video games and circuits. He had a thirst for knowledge and adventure. In 1974, he embarked on a spiritual journey to India. Now, you might wonder what's so tech-related about this, but this trip was a pivotal moment. During his time in India, Jobs explored meditation and spirituality, which later played a role in his leadership style at Apple. It was also during this period that he dabbed into psychedelic drugs. Yep, we're talking about LSD, the mind-bending stuff. It's essential to note that this was a part of the counterculture movement of the 60s and 70s, and Jobs was no exception. Here's where it gets intriguing. Steve Jobs openly admitted that his experiments with LSD were one of the 2 or 3 most important things I have done in my life. Quite a bold statement, right? Jobs believed that taking LSD had a profound impact on his perspective and creativity. It opened up his mind to different ways of thinking and seeing the world. That creative and innovative spark that Apple is famous for might just owe a bit to those psychedelic experiences. But LSD wasn't the only mind-altering substance Jobs was acquainted with back in the 70s. He was also no stranger to marijuana and hashish, often indulging in these substances with friends. Jobs even admitted to eating pot brownies. It seems that these substances helped him relax and tap into his creativity. Jobs had another interesting hobby during his early years: the art of phone phreaking. This wasn't about making prank calls. It was about manipulating the telephone system to make long-distance calls for free. Jobs was fascinated by the technical challenge of it all. It wasn't about breaking the law for him. It was about mastering the system. These experiences with electronics and the telephone system would later influence his approach to technology. It wasn't just about using it. It was about understanding it, bending it to its will, and making it better. And that's where Apple came into play. Comment down below how you think Apple started. And while you're at it, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like this video as well. It all began when two tech enthusiasts, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, crossed paths and decided to turn their shared love for electronics into something extraordinary. In 1976, they founded Apple Computer in Steve Jobs' family garage, which would become the birthplace of a technological revolution. To fund their venture, Jobs sold his Volkswagen bus, and Wozniak parted his cherished calculator, displaying their unwavering commitment. Their determination led to the creation of the Apple I, a pioneering computer with a fully assembled motherboard. However, the real game changer was the Apple II in 1977, a user-friendly, affordable computer that ushered computing into homes and schools. As Apple grew, so did its challenges, including competition from IBM. Despite the success of the Macintosh in 1994, Steve Jobs was sidelined in 1985. Yet, this was not the end. He returned to Apple in 1997, introducing groundbreaking products like the iMac, MacBook Air, iPod, and iPhone. In 1985, Steve Jobs' journey took a dramatic turn as he departed from Apple, the company he co-founded, due to internal conflicts and differences in vision. However, this departure didn't mark the end of Jobs' influence on the tech world. In 1986, he founded Next Inc., a hardware and software enterprise with a mission to create high-performance computers for education and business. While Next faced challenges in the market, it caught the attention of Apple. In 1996, Apple acquired Next for $429 million, which brought Steve Jobs back into the Apple fold. Jobs returned to Apple in 1997 and assumed the role of CEO, bringing with him a new management team. He made a bold statement by accepting an annual salary of just $1, emphasizing his commitment to turning Apple around. Under his leadership, Apple introduced a series of groundbreaking products, including the iMac, MacBook Air, iPod, and later the iconic iPhone. These products not only redefined their respective industries, but also solidified Apple's position as a leader in consumer technology. Steve Jobs' impact wasn't limited to Apple alone. In 1986, he purchased an animation company from George Lucas, which eventually became Pixar Animation Studios. He invested $50 million of his own money into Pixar, a studio that went on to produce a string of beloved and critically acclaimed animated films, including Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. The success of Pixar's movies earned the company a staggering $4 billion, making Steve Jobs the largest shareholder. The story didn't end there. In 2006, Pixar merged with Disney, making Steve Jobs a significant player in both companies and reinforcing his reputation as a visionary, not only in the tech world, but also in the entertainment industry. Steve Jobs' return to Apple and his involvement with Pixar were pivotal moments in his career, solidifying his legacy as a transformative figure in multiple fields. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and stay posted for our upcoming videos.